Esaenai el heharim me'ayin yavo Ezri Esaenai el heharim me'ayin yavo Ezri Ezri me'im Adonai Ose shamayim v'haaretz Ezri me'im Adonai Ose shamayim v'haaretz Aitain lamod raglecha Ayanum shomrecha Hine lo yanum velo ishan Shomer Yisrael Adonai shomrecha Adonai tzilcha al yad yeminecha Adonai shomrecha Adonai tzilcha al yad yeminecha Yomam hashemesh lo yakeka ve'yareach balayla Adonai yishmorcha mikol ra Yishmor et nafshecha Adonai yishmor seircha uvoecha me'ata ve'ad olam Adonai yishmor seircha uvoecha me'ata ve'ad olam Al mekomo yavo v'shalom. A song for those who ascend. I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, from God, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. You see, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian, your protection at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your life. God will guard your going and coming now and forever. May our beloved Irving Sunny Rose go unto God in peace. Hatzur tamim Paulo ki chod rachab mishpat el emunah ve'enav el tzadik v'yashar hu. Tzadik atah Adonai lamidu lehachayot asher bi'ercha pigadon kol ruchot chalil lecha zirchoneinu limchot v'yunaynech b'rachamim aleinu v'kilchot ki lecha Adon harachamim v'haslichot Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach Yishem Adonai mevorach ve'hu rachum yechaber bo v'lo yeshchit v'yirba l'ashiv v'apo v'lo yirkel chamato ve'yashov ve'afar la'aretz she'aya ve'aruach tashuv el ha'elohim asher netana. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns to God who gave it. May our beloved soul be bound up in the bond of life eternal, and may God send comfort to those who mourn and grant strength to those whose burden is sorrow. Thank you everyone for being here today. Whether you're able to be with us here in person at the cemetery, or for those of you who are joining us online, tuning into our live broadcast. On behalf of Sunny's family, I thank all of you for being here and for joining your hearts together to give comfort and strength to those who mourn. Today we pay tribute to Irving Sunny Rose, Israel ben Moshe Vedina, the son of Morris and Dinah, Zichronam Livracha, of blessed memory. We have come together as a family and a community to honor him, to celebrate his life, and to say goodbye. Sunny passed away Sunday evening, the third day in the Hebrew month of Tishrei. He was 91. Mourning is a time filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. Especially during these uncertain times of the COVID pandemic, when families that would otherwise be together are kept apart. In Jewish tradition, we begin our service with the chanting of psalms, linking Sunny's life with thousands of years of tradition, the people of Israel, and the eternity of God. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, binote sheyarbitzeini al mei menucho, yenahaleni nafshi yeshovev. Yancheni v'maglei tzedek leman shemo, Gam ki elech b'geitz ha'mavet lo irara, ki ata imadi. Shivtecha u'mishantecha hema yenachamuni. Taroch lefanai shulchanei getzorerai, Dishanta v'Hashem en roshi kosi rivaya, Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. A Psalm of David. Adonai, God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside the still waters, and restores my soul. Guides me on the right path, for that is God's nature. Though I walk through the valley in the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a banquet for me in the presence of my foes. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and loving kindness shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. I was going to go and do it. I was hoping that maybe he was having some success. I figure as long as it's just me talking, it's better. Right. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, they can. Yeah. We're just taking a moment to see if there's a way that we can get them to give us a short break. People are allowed to, you can come a little closer too if you like. I mean, it's wherever people are comfortable, absolutely. But Perry asked that I mention something. No, the cameras, we're good. We're good. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Thank you again, everyone. We are privileged today to have Perry deliver a eulogy that his older brother Scott has written in their father's memory. Scott is in California and of course can't be here right now. Perry will say a little bit more about that. This eulogy paints a picture of a remarkable man who lived a tremendous life. I'm remiss to say I did not know Sonny personally, though I wish I had, after hearing the stories, meeting with his sons just yesterday. This is a life where family was first and foremost. Nothing counted more. Whether it was his loyalty as a son and a brother, particularly after his father, Morris, who was also his business partner, died suddenly when Sonny was just 33. Or whether it was his tireless efforts to provide as a father of three, or his incredible, unwavering devotion as a husband to his wife of 51 years, Libby, particularly in the later years of her life when she became sick with Alzheimer's and required constant care and attention. I'm told he was tall, blue-eyed, and handsome. That Sonny Rose was a man who was strong-willed, knew what he wanted, and often could not be talked out of it. That he was always coming up with new schemes and plans, loved saving mementos, and was maybe even a tad eccentric in his ways. Someone who could never quite ever sit still, but whose attitude in the later decades of his life, that one might call thrill-seeking, adrenaline junkie, adventurous behavior, marathons, polar bear swims, motorcycle rides well into his 70s. This later chapter of his life serves as an inspiration to anyone ever who has ever uttered the words, "I'm too old to do that." And I'm told he was a man who was incredibly proud of his identity. Proud to be Jewish and to be known and recognized as a Jew, and a tremendous supporter of Israel. From the Six-Day War, when he donated whatever he had at the time to support the cause, to his first and only visit to the Holy Land in 1991, which he treasured, and to his volunteer work post-retirement with the Jewish National Fund later in his life. Quite fitting for a man whose Hebrew name was Yisrael. But I bring this up just by way of introduction, and I will now turn things over to Perry to deliver the hesped, the eulogy, as well as some of his own comments and reflection on behalf of his brother and in honor of their father.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Scott, for getting him to stop. These are difficult times in which to mourn the loss of a loved one. Both of my brothers, Scott and Daniel, and most of their children are in California or other parts of the U.S. and cannot be here today due to COVID quarantine restrictions. I wish that they could be at my side today, but they cannot. It's not the same, but at least they can watch the live streaming of the service and be with us in spirit. My older brother Scott has written a eulogy to my father, and I will read it on his behalf. He is watching right now from Sacramento. Firstly, his daughter Katie, also in Sacramento, chose a poem in my father's honor, Do Not Go Gently Into the Night by Dylan Thomas. As Katie cannot be here in person, I'll ask my cousin Barbara to read it on her behalf. Right into the mic, Barb. Stand close. Pull your mask off. Take your mask off.
Do not go gentle into that night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright, their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learn too late they grieve it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death who see the blinding sight. Blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light.
Thank you, Barbara, and thank you, Katie, for choosing that. The following are my brother's words and provide a brief synopsis of my father's life. Thank you all for being here. Oops. These are difficult times for all of us, and we're especially appreciative that you could be here with us to honor the memory of our father, Irving, Sonny Rose. Sonny Rose, his friends knew him as Sonny. Some of them didn't even know his given name was Irving. In fact, he was quite insistent and reminded us frequently that when he passed on, he wanted us to refer to him as Sonny at his funeral and in his obituary. Otherwise, friends won't know it's me. Irving was simply Irving to his daughter-in-laws, Marlene and Teresa, and obviously he was just dad to his sons, Perry, Scott, and Daniel. But he was also known by at least two other names. He was grandpa to 6 of his grandchildren, Christopher, Brandon, Katie, Robert, Shayla, and Jacob. And he was Uncle Irving to his niece Barbara Stoller-Fairman, her husband Mark, and their 2 adult children, Alex and Haley, and also to his nephew Lawrence Stoller and his partner Diane. Irving was born to Morris and Dinah Berg Rose 91 years ago on March 8, 1929, together with his twin sister Lillian Rose Stoller. In fact, I can recall him often teasing her about her age because she was 20 minutes older than him. Irving and Lillian grew up on Scotia Street, adjacent to the Red River in the north end of Winnipeg. Our mother, Libby Connor, lived just down the street on Bannerman and was Lillian's best friend. Eventually, when Irving married Libby Connor, Lillian Rose Stoller was her matron of honor, and Harvey Stoller was Irving's best man, not to mention his best friend. There's a funny story Dad used to tell about their Scotia Street house during the Great Flood of 1950. My father, Zeta Moisha, had the foresight to install a one-way valve in the basement sewer. All the neighbors' basements were flooded, but ours was dry. But Zeta Moisha wasn't convinced the valve was holding the river water back, so he pried open the valve to see for himself. In an instant, a geyser of water erupted and flooded the entire basement. I thought my mother was going to kill him. My father often spoke of the grocery store. His parents had in the North End when he was young. But by the time I arrived on the scene in the 1950s, Morris Rose and his brother Sam Rose had a business in the wholesale district, Utility Glove, and Irving was an apprentice of sorts, learning the business. In the early 1960s, Morris Rose, with Irving as his partner, purchased a manufacturer of outdoor furniture, Thorkelson, and renamed it Thorkelson Rose. Sadly, following Morris's sudden death in 1963, Irving, at the age of 33, was saddled with running a large manufacturing operation without the benefit of his father's guidance, and he struggled for the rest of the decade to keep it going before finally throwing in the towel. Fortunately, he had the support of his family, including my mother Libby, his sister Lillian, and his brother-in-law Harvey Stoller. During these difficult times, he also remained especially close to his first cousins, Sam and Ruth Clapman, and Mickey and Rita Clapman. Throughout the 70s and 80s, Irving successfully built a small business working as a representative for various garment manufacturers. He often spoke fondly of the time he spent with his associate and close friend, Louis Diner. Sadly, the sudden death of Harvey, Irving's best friend, dealt a heavy blow in 1990. Despite this loss, the early 90s were prime time for Libby and Irving as they traveled to Hawaii, Mexico, Israel, and especially California, where they could spend time with their older grandchildren. Libby and Irving were overjoyed at the expansion of their family with the marriage of Daniel in 1994 and Perry in 1995, and the later arrival of 3 additional grandchildren. Following Libby's diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease, Irving became ever more dedicated to her well-being and care. Subsequent to her passing in 2002, after 51 years of marriage, he sold the family home in Winnipeg and followed his dream of living by the beach in the West End of Vancouver. He rented an apartment and walked to the beach, or he swam in the ocean nearly every day. He became actively involved in fundraising for the Jewish National Fund and frequently attended their events. He often traveled abroad, sometimes alone, sometimes with groups. Several of his favorite destinations included Santa Barbara, California, Mexico, and Portugal. At the same time, he pursued his long-standing interest in motorcycling, purchasing a very large Kawasaki which he kept in California. He had flames painted on the engine cowling and then planned in great detail a lengthy road trip. He was especially proud after completing this trip, during which he traversed Highway 101 up and down the west coast of California. It wasn't long before he became well known by the local bikers and bike shops as that cool old dude. Our mother was probably rolling over in her grave. I recall one occasion when my car broke down by the side of the road in our neighborhood. Much to my dismay, I spotted a motorcycle cop in my rearview mirror and instantaneously sensed trouble. The cop, wearing full leathers and helmet, pulled up behind me, got off his bike, and walked to the driver's side window. "What's the problem?" said my father, who I had mistakenly assumed was a real police officer. Dad was saddened when he lost his dear sister Lillian to cancer in 2006, then was crushed when cousin Mickey Clapman died suddenly a year later. He alluded to these losses when he stated that losing so many of my loved ones is the worst part of getting old. His motorcycle days ended shortly after his return to Winnipeg in 2011, when he toppled off his bike and broke his hip while practicing to get his motor cycle license renewed. He was 82. Although his routine gradually became more limited, he continued to meet weekly for lunch with his cousin Sam Clapman until Sam's passing 2 years ago. There is so much more I could tell you, but I've already gone on too long. Thank you again for being here today to honor the life of our father Irving, Sonia Rose, and thank you for all the love and caring you've given to our family. Thank you, Scott, who I know is watching now, for those loving words. Before I conclude, I wanted to add just a few brief words of my own. My father moved back to Winnipeg about 9 years ago. He lived on his own for a few years, but by the time he was about 85, dementia began to set in. As we were his only children still in Winnipeg, it was up to Marlene and I to keep him safe and comfortable in his final years. Marlene, to her immense credit, adopted my dad as if he were his own, keeping a closer eye on him in his final years more than anyone else, myself included. Despite ever-increasing dementia, my dad managed to live 6 more good years, first at the Portsmouth retirement home and more recently at the Simkin Center. If any of the home care workers or nurses who took such good care of him are here or watching, my deepest thanks and gratitude. In his last few years, I often worried about my dad's declining quality of life. I would often ask him how he felt, and he would answer, "I feel great, just like an old man should." He kept saying that almost to the very end. Whenever I heard it, I felt in some small way that we had succeeded. I often worried about my father's declining mental health. Miraculously, he always recognized Marlene and me until his very last days, and for that, I feel very fortunate. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Scott for writing that eulogy. Thank you to Perry for delivering it as well as your own words. Beautifully done. There was one other story that stood out to me that I was waiting to see if it would come up, and then I figured if not, I would share it from my conversation with Scott, Perry, and Daniel yesterday. I just find, as someone who didn't know Sonny Rose, I just find the story of his life, like I said at the beginning, to be truly inspirational and remarkable, particularly that he was fearless, and he wouldn't quit, and he wouldn't say no, and he wouldn't let things that I think would make most of us steer away from them. He wouldn't do that. I think about my own grandparents, my own grandmother who would never travel by herself or things like that. It's quite amazing. But Daniel told a story that when Sonny was in his 50s and he was starting to get into running marathons, he was practicing, and Libby had insisted that Daniel go with Sonny. And the way Daniel told the story was because everyone kind of expected that after a few blocks he'd have to quit and give up, or maybe he would fall or something like that, and Daniel would be there to help him. Well, he never fell, and throughout the run, he kept noticing older people who were running, and he would say to Daniel, "I know her, she's older than me, we have to get ahead of her." And I just thought that was just such an amazing story, and I didn't want that to go without being said, because not only did he never fall or never quit, he kept passing people, he kept laughing people. And I'll say it once again, that truly is inspirational. Eternal God, Master of Mercy, we ask that you give us the gift of remembering. May our memories of Sonny be tender and true, undiminished by time. Let us recall him and love him as he was. Shelter us with the gift of tears. Let us express our sense of loss, our sorrow, our pain, as well as our love, and even words unspoken. Bless us with the gift of prayer, that we may face you with an open heart, with trusting faith, unembarrassed and unashamed. Strengthen us with the gift of hope, that we may always believe in the beauty of life, in the power of goodness, and in our right to joy. May we surrender our being and the soul of our beloved to your all-knowing compassion. I will now chant the El Malei Rachamim, the memorial prayer, in memory of Irving Sonny Rose. Israel ben Moshe Vedina. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Amsei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, B'malot Kedoshim Uteorim, Kezohar Arakia Mazhirim, En Nishmat Israel ben Moshe Vedina Shalach Leolamo. Began Eidente Menuchato Anabal Harachamim Hastireu Besei Teken Afecha Leolamim Utzror Vitzror Achaim Enishmato Adonai Hu Nachalato V'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo ben Omar Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure to the soul of Irving Sonny Rose, son of Morris and Dinah, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that he find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. We'll conclude in a moment as we join together with the words of the mourner's Kaddish, and then our ritual of taking our turns. Harry and Marlene will lead us, other family members, and then other people here are invited to participate in the shoveling of dirt into the grave. I'll explain more about that in just a moment. I did want to say, though, of course, during these times of the pandemic that have gone on over 6 months and continue to go on, the way that we mourn, the way that we grieve with Shiva has been derailed. Harry and Marlene wanted me to say that they're going to try and do an outdoor meal after this service back at their place at 46 Exmouth, trying to keep people separated and again outside. Hopefully the weather will continue to cooperate for those of you who are interested. And what I've been saying to families is, just because we can't do Shiva in the same way doesn't mean you can't share your memories and your feelings, your emails, your phone calls, your text messages. I know have been appreciated to this point and continue to be for people who still want to reach out to Sonny's family. When it comes to shoveling dirt into the grave, our tradition holds that that is a mitzvah, a commandment, but also a righteous act that we do selflessly without hope of any reward. With this act, we take on the responsibility that we hold near and dear in our tradition of caring for our loved ones until the very end. We believe the people we love deserve to be buried by our own hands, kind, knowing, sorrowful hands that once held their hands. As I mentioned, you're all invited to participate in this. The family will lead us. We know it is a painful act, but we remind ourselves in this moment that it is also an act born out of love and compassion for someone who meant so much to so many people. As part of our service earlier, we said in Hebrew the words of Job, Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, yehi shem Adonai mevorach. God you give, God you take, blessed be the name of God. May the memory of Irving Rose, Sonny, be a blessing as we mark that his essence will never leave our hearts and our souls. We join now together in the words of the Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'gala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'alam ulamei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitale v'yithalal shemei dekudsha barichu le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates peace and harmony on high bring peace and harmony to us, to all Israel, and to all of humanity, as we again say amen. You may have noticed we add an extra word during the Kaddish. From Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, during these 10 days of repentance, we add the extra word le'ela, 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 mikol birchata, which means higher and higher, which is quite fitting, as we hope for our beloved on the other side to be raised higher and higher, and also for his memory to inspire us to reach higher and higher heights in our lives. That will continue for anyone saying the Kaddish through the end of Yom Kippur, which is this coming Monday evening. A final word about the shoveling of the dirt before I turn things over to the family. And again, thank you to everyone for being here and to everyone for tuning in. We have gloves for people to use. Most people pour 3 shovelfuls of dirt, but there are different traditions in Jewish cemeteries around the world. Some people will use the front of the shovel, while some people will use the back. Some people will pass the shovel to the next person, but other people, as if reluctant to pass on this duty, will return the shovel to the dirt. As with many customs, whatever resonates with you, whatever you find meaning in, is what you should embrace as we go through this. What's important is that we take the opportunity as a community and as a family to shovel dirt into Sonny's grave. With that, I invite Perry and Marlene to go first, and other family members and everyone to follow. And again, one more time, I thank you all for being here today. Oh, there's no rush. You don't have to worry. Anywhere. I should also mention there are 2 shovels. They're both sides. You can come from both sides. And for anyone who wants to participate but is worried about the size of the shovel, there's a small pail here with a small shovel just in front of where I'm standing that works just as well. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, right?